He dubbed me the relic in pearls right there in the lobby. 3 minutes after swiping his badge for the first time. Grinned like it was locker room banter. Not a knife twist in the gut of someone who'd bled for this firm longer than he'd been shaving. Ethan Caldwell. Fresh-faced wunderkind poached from a Silicon Valley unicorn where they traded ethics for equity and called it innovation. He sauntered into Sterling Financial like he owned the marble floors. Tie loose. AirPods in. Firing off emails while barely glancing up to shake my hand. Emily. Right? The one who babysits the vaults, he said, chuckling as if we'd shared an inside joke. I forced a nod, my fingers tightening around the merger binder I'd prepped overnight. By noon, he'd already slashed me from the investor loop, rerouting comms through his shiny new Slack channel where everything was agile and disruptive. My inbox went silent, except for his casual ping. Handle the grunt work on those filings. I'll take the vision stuff. Vision stuff. As if the ironclad covenants I'd forged over 2 decades were just footnotes to his TED Talk dreams. I'd weathered 4 CEOs, a market crash that gutted our portfolio, and a whistleblower scandal that nearly sank us in '08. But Ethan? He treated compliance like a speed bump on his highway to glory. That first afternoon, he waltzed into my office, unannounced. Of course, plopped down like it was his couch, and started redlining the diligence packet I'd built brick by brick. This is dinosaur-era legalese, he muttered, deleting a whole section on contingent liabilities without so much as a skim. We need to sex it up for the VCs. No one's reading this novel. I watched the cursor devour my words, each strike a quiet erasure of the safeguards that had kept us afloat through audits and arbitrations. He didn't know or care that those clauses were mine, drafted in the dead of night during the last acquisition, when the board begged for a firewall against fraud claims. They'd named me the continuity custodian in the bylaws, a role buried deep but unbreakable, like rebar in concrete. But Ethan? He saw a middle-aged woman in sensible heels and assumed I was decor. The sting hit low, a slow burn under my ribs. Not rage yet, just that hollow ache when someone mistakes your foundation for furniture. I didn't argue. Not then. Instead, I saved a shadow copy of the original, time-stamped it, and tucked it into my encrypted drive. Labeled it Ethan Edits, pre-approval. Not for spite, but for the storm I could smell brewing. Because in finance, disasters don't announce themselves with thunder, they whisper through overlooked lines. He left my office humming some startup anthem, oblivious, while I sat there, staring at the gutted dock, feeling the weight of 20 years pressing down. Quietly, methodically, I started a log. Every change, every dismissal, every time he called a critical clause bloat. Entry 1. Removed liability waterfall without counsel review. The air in the room felt thicker after he left, like the walls were holding their breath. I exhaled slowly, fingers hovering over the keyboard, wondering how long until the house of cards he'd built came tumbling. By week 2, the dismissals piled up like unread memos. Ethan hosted war room sessions in the glass conference room, all whiteboards and buzzwords, where he'd pace like a motivational speaker, tossing out terms like pivot and synergy while the team nodded like bobbleheads. I was relegated to the back row, notepad in hand, invisible until he needed a fact check. Emily, what's the gist on those escrow holds? TLD, DR version, he'd say, smirking, as if my expertise was a Cliff Notes app. The team chuckled nervously, avoiding my eyes. I delivered the summary, crisp, factual, explaining how the holds tied into federal disclosure rules, preventing post-merger clawbacks. He waved it off. Cool. But let's trim that fat. Buyers want trust, not paranoia. Paranoia. The word landed like a slap, echoing in my chest. That fat was the spine of our defense, the reason we'd dodged 3 lawsuits in the past decade. But to him, it was excess, like calories in a pitch deck. I felt the damming up inside, emotions coiling tight, frustration laced with a bitter amusement at his hubris. How could someone so green rewrite rules he didn't understand? That night, alone in my office with the city lights flickering below, I pulled up the master agreement. There it was. Clause 9.2, Continuity Custodian Designation. My name, etched in perpetuity by board resolution in 2014, after I'd navigated us through a hostile takeover bid. It made me the sole arbiter for escrow disputes in any high-stakes transfer. Untouched, unnoticed by Ethan's hasty hacks. I printed it, highlighted it in yellow, and added it to my log. The paper felt solid in my hands, a reminder that power wasn't in volume or veneers, it was in permanence. As the printer hummed, I leaned back, the tension easing just a fraction. He thought he was streamlining, I knew he was stripping shields. And when the cracks showed, I'd be the one holding the blueprint. The first real crack appeared during a dry run with external auditors. Ethan presented his lean version, slides popping with emojis and graphs, while the auditors furrowed brows over the diluted terms. This indemnity ladder, it's vague, one said. A veteran with salt and pepper hair and a no-nonsense stare. Without specificity, you're exposed to retroactive claims. Ethan leaned in. All charisma. We're building on relational capital. Details kill deals. The auditor paused, then looked at me, the only one not smiling. Emily, you've handled these before. Thoughts. Before I could speak, Ethan jumped in. She's on support. We've got this. Support. The word twisted in my gut. A demotion disguised as delegation. I swallowed the retort, nodded politely. But later, in the hallway, the auditor pulled me aside. That ladder's yours, isn't it? From the 14 framework. I confirmed with a quiet yes. He shook his head. Don't let them gut it. That validation, small as it was, fueled the slow build inside me, a mix of indication and resolve. Back at my desk, I updated the log. Entry 7. Auditor concern dismissed. The emotions swirled, hurt from the sidelining, a quiet fury at the recklessness. But beneath it, a steady pulse of patience. Storms don't rush, they gather. The deletions kept coming, each one a chiseled chip at the structure I'd built. Ethan had this ritual. He'd email late at night. Subject lines like quick tweaks for flow, attaching docs riddled with strikes. One morning, I opened a file to find he'd nuked the entire dispute resolution annex, my annex. The one that had saved us millions in arbitration fees during the last downturn. Too wordy, his comment read. Let's vibe it out post-close. Vibe it out. As if multi-million disputes resolve themselves over craft beer. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking mockingly, feeling that metallic tang of suppressed anger coat my tongue. Not explosive yet, but simmering, building pressure like a kettle on low. I restored the section in my private draft. Noted the change in my log, entry 12, Annex removal risks SEC noncompliance, and carried on. He never asked for input, just assumed my silence meant assent. In meetings, he'd position himself as the savior, regaling the team with tales from his startup days. Back at Technova, we closed a round by ditching the legalese. Trust me, this works. The junior analysts ate it up, eyes wide. But the veterans, the ones who'd seen recessions chew companies whole, shot me glances. Subtle nods of solidarity. One, Carla from Ops, whispered during a coffee break. He's playing with fire.
Eminência.
I smiled thinly, the weight of unspoken words heavy on my chest. Fire? He was dancing on dynamite. That afternoon, he pulled me into his office, glass walls, minimalist desk, a single succulent looking as out of place as I felt. Emily, I need you to focus on curation. Polish the packets, but leave the strategy to me. His tone was paternal, laced with that condescending edge men like him wield like a club. I nodded, but inside, the coil tightened, frustration morphing into a quiet resolve. Curation. As if I were a museum guide, not the architect. I started cross-referencing his edits against regulatory guidelines. Quietly. The log grew. Timestamps. Screenshots. Rationales he'd given in passing. Not a vendetta, but a safety net. Because in this world, when deals implode, fingers point at the quiet ones first. That night, driving home through the rain-slicked streets of Chicago, the wipers thumping a steady rhythm, I let the emotion surface. Hurt. Yes, from being reduced to a relic. But deeper. A fierce protectiveness for the firm. For the work that had defined me. 20 years of late nights. Foregone vacations. The quiet pride in structures that stood invisible until needed. Ethan was eroding that. One delete at a time. The rain blurred the lights, mirroring the haze in my mind. But clarity pierced through. I wouldn't fight loud. I'd let the paper speak. The turning point whispered in during a prep call with the lead buyer. Victor Langston, a Wall Street legend with a reputation for sniffing out weak spots like a bloodhound. Ethan dominated the line, pitching his streamlined vision. But Victor cut in sharp. Escrow controls. Who's the point person? Ethan faltered, then laughed it off. We've flattened that. Team effort. Victor's pause stretched, pregnant with doubt. I see a designation in the originals. Emily Thorne. My name. Invoked like a ghost. Ethan mumbled something about legacy roles. But Victor pressed. Bring her on next call. After hanging up, Ethan pinged me. Heads up. They want the old guard vibe. Just nod along. The message burned. A spark to the fuse. Old guard. As if my role was nostalgia. Not necessity. I updated the log. Heart pounding now, not with fear, but anticipation. The damming was cracking, pressure mounting. Victor's interest lingered like a shadow. In the next session, he addressed me directly. Emily, walk us through the continuity provisions. Ethan tried to interject, but Victor waved him silent. I spoke calmly, detailing the clauses, how they interlocked with federal regs, shielded against volatility. Victor listened, then said, Solid. Why the changes? Ethan jumped in, but the damage was done. Eyes shifted, doubts seated. Back in the office, Ethan cornered me. Don't overcomplicate next time. We're closing, not litigating. His voice cracked slightly, the first hint of unease. I met his gaze. Steady. Understood. But inside, the build intensified, emotions layering, empowerment edging out the hurt, a quiet thrill at the unraveling. My log now spanned pages, a chronicle of hubris. As I left that day, the city buzzed around me, but my world narrowed to the inevitability. He thought he was leading, I knew I was the anchor. The audit trail became my ritual, a nightly confessional. Each entry a thread in the web, weaving tighter. Ethan escalated, canceling my access to key folders, rerouting approvals through him. Efficiency, he called it. Isolation stung, but it fueled the resolve. One evening, poring over his latest hack job on the reps and warranties, I found he'd altered a key threshold, lowering it to speed the close. Reckless. Illegal. Potentially. The anger flared hot now, but I channeled it, printed the diff, added to the log. Entry 23, threshold breach, exposes to fraud liability. The emotions roiled, betrayal at the firm's risk, personal affront at the erasure. But patience held, a dam straining under the weight. The boardroom hummed with tension as Victor arrived unannounced, his presence sucking the air like a vacuum. Ethan leaped up, all smiles and handshakes, but Victor's eyes scanned the room, landing on me in the corner. "Emily," he said, voice gravelly, "join us at the head." Ethan's grin faltered, a flicker of confusion. I moved without fanfare, folder in hand, feeling the shift, the slow pivot from shadow to spotlight. Ethan launched into his pitch, slides gleaming, but Victor interrupted. "Show me the escrow draft. The real one." Ethan hesitated, then pulled up his version, sleek, stripped. Victor's brow furrowed. "This is hollow. Where's the backbone?" Ethan stammered about modernization, but Victor turned to me. "Your take." I slid my original across, calm as glass. "This preserves integrity." The room stilled, eyes darting. Ethan's face paled, the first crack visible. Revelations cascaded from there. Victor compared drafts side by side, his questions probing like scalpels. "Who authored the continuity clause?" I answered quietly. "I did." "Board ratified." Ethan interjected, voice pitching higher. "We've evolved beyond that." But Victor's gaze hardened, evolved into exposure. The emotions surged in me, vindication swelling, mixed with the ache of past slights. The team watched, whispers rippling. I didn't gloat, just let the facts unfold. Each one a weight on Ethan's shoulders. By mid-meeting, the buyer's counsel chimed in, echoing concerns. Ethan sweated now, charisma crumbling. I felt the pressure release slightly, a valve turning, but the build wasn't over. The log, unseen, pulsed in my mind, a arsenal ready. As the discussion deepened, Ethan's deflections grew frantic. "This is just paranoia," he snapped at one point, echoing his earlier dismissals. Victor leaned back, arms crossed. "Paranoia built empires. Hubris topples them." The quote hung heavy. I shared precedents, cases where similar dilutions led to collapses, my voice steady, emotions channeled into precision. Hurt from the relic labeled transmuted into poise. Ethan glanced at me, eyes narrowing, but powerless. The meeting stretched, tensions coiling tighter, until Victor declared, "We need the full structure restored. Emily leads." Ethan's jaw dropped, the dam breaking in his world. In mine, it was just beginning to flood. Post-meeting, the hallway buzzed with undercurrents. Carla pulled me aside. "That was epic." I shrugged, but inside, the rush hit, a cocktail of relief and righteous fire. Ethan lingered, approaching with forced casualness. "Hey, no hard feelings. Team win, right?" His eyes betrayed the panic. I nodded, words sparse. "Of course." But the log grew. Entry 30, buyer demands restoration. The emotions layered deeper, a quiet joy at justice inching closer, tempered by the sadness of unnecessary chaos. That night, reviewing the restored draft, the city skyline blurred through my window, mirroring the clarity sharpening in my resolve. The explosion loomed, inevitable now. The emergency huddle came swift, board members dialing in remotely, voices terse. Ethan presented first, spinning his narrative, minor tweaks for efficiency. But Victor, on speaker, dismantled it. "These aren't tweaks, they're torpedoes." Evidence mounted, my log, shared discreetly with counsel, illuminated the trail. Ethan's edits, timestamps, risks. The board grilled him. Who approved? Silence. My turn came unbidden. I outlined the originals, the designations, my name woven in. Emotions crested, pride surging against the tide of past invisibility. Ethan stammered denials, but the facts stood unyielding. The room's energy shifted, allegiance realigning. I felt the damning burst inwardly, a cathartic release, but held composure. Justice wasn't loud, it was inexorable. The final confrontation ignited in the boardroom's sterile glow. Papers scattered like battlefield debris. Ethan stood, gesturing wildly. This is overkill. We're losing momentum. Victor fixed him with a stare. Momentum into a wall. Then, turning to the board, the continuity custodian, who is it? Ethan blinked.
We.
Streamlined. I slid the clause forward. Voice even. It's me. Per resolution. The revelation rippled. Gasp subtle. Ethan's face contorted shock. Then fury. You're not even key, but Victor read aloud, my name. 3 times. Etched in escrow's core. The explosion hit, board members murmuring. Buyers nodding. Ethan's empire crumbled, exposed as facade. Emotions overwhelmed me, triumph crashing over the hurt. A tidal wave of validation. He sputtered. This is a setup. But the paper proved otherwise. Silent no more. I met his eyes. It's just the rules. Chaos ensued. Controlled but searing. The board paused the deal, demanding full review under my lead. Ethan was sidelined. Pending evaluation. He glared. Voice low. You planned this. I shook my head. You ignored it. The truth stung him deeper than any retort. Victor approached post-meeting. Impressive fortitude. I nodded, the rush ebbing into quiet satisfaction. The log, now evidence, had transformed silence into symphony. As others filed out, Ethan lingered, deflated. The air crackled with his defeat, my assent unspoken. Emotion settled, empowerment laced with empathy for his fall. But no regret. The bong no had come.
Cleansing.
Rebuilding commenced immediately, drafts flowing under my guidance. The team deferred.
Respect reborn.
Ethan watched from the sidelines, a ghost of his former swagger. One clause at a time. I reinforced the structure, solid, unyielding. Victor offered a promotion, advisory role on my team. Tempting, but I declined. I'm the foundation here. He understood, nodding. The conclusion lingered. A re-em of what-ifs. Could hubris be unlearned? The firm stabilized, but the scar remained, a reminder of underestimation's cost. In the quiet office, folder closed, I exhaled. Power wasn't seized, it endured. The aftermath unfolded in hushed tones, memos circulating like whispers. Ethan was reassigned to a strategic pivot role, code for demotion. His office stripped of its minimalist flair. He avoided my gaze in the halls, a shadow of the disruptor who'd labeled me relic. The deal resumed, fortified by my clauses, closing smoothly without the fanfare he'd craved. Board members sent notes, grateful for your stewardship. Validation. Quiet but profound. Emotions reflected, the initial hurt faded, replaced by a resilient peace. I'd weathered the storm, emerging not victorious, but vital. The firm hummed onward, lessons embedded like clauses in fine print. Reflecting alone, city lights twinkling, I pondered the human mouth wan, ambition blinding to quiet strength. Ethan's fall posed a Dowda question. When does innovation cross into recklessness? Who pays when egos eclipse expertise? No easy answers. Just the re-am of a near miss, haunting like an unsigned contract. In the end, foundations endure, whether acknowledged or not. And sometimes, The quiet ones hold the keys.